Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet part 3 of the Ripley Shawl, which is the Moogly crochet along for fall 2019. Please go to the link in the description for right and left-handed video tutorials, as well as parts 1, 2, the written pattern, and all the supplies you need. For this pattern, we are using 1 cake of Red Heart It's a Wrap sprinkles. However, if you're making it bigger than instructed, you will need 2 cakes. You will also need a US F hook, which is 3.75 millimeters. This one is by Furls. In part 1, we covered, if I set this aside here, part 1 was the shells, part 2 is the granny stitch, and part 3 is going to be the V-stitch section. So let's get started with row 39 of the Ripley Shawl. All right. So section 3 begins with row 39, and row 39 begins with a chain 4. Now, unlike the chain 4s that we did at the beginning of rows in the shell stitch section that counted as trebles, the chain 4s in the V-stitch section count as a double crochet and chain 1. So what I'm going to do now is pull up one of my stitch markers, and I'm going to put it in the 3rd chain I just made, right there. Just do my best to get it right under those top 2 loops. And then I will know that is the top of my double crochet, and this is a chain 1. So when I come back the other direction, this will be the stitch that I want to work into. After that, I am going to double crochet in that very first stitch. So I need to turn my work. There we go. Looking at the instructions instead of my work there for a second. So I'll pull that stitch marker out of the way, find that very first stitch, and double crochet right back in there. So now we've got our first V-stitch made. Then we are going to work our next V-stitch, which is always a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in this section in the next stitch. So we find the very next stitch and work a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet right back in that same stitch. So now we've got a V-stitch made in the first stitch and in the second stitch of the row. Then we are going to skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2, which brings us to the center of this group of 3, and we're going to work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet there. So we double crochet, oops, and try that again. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And that right there is our repeat. Skip 2 stitches, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the next. Again, that puts us right back in the center of that group of 3. So that means we're going to work one of these little V-stitches, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet V-stitches in the center of each one of these groups of 3, right up until we get to that marked stitch. So continue doing that on across, and I will meet you when we get to the marked chain 2 section. Okay, so as you can see, I've worked a V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the center stitch of each of those groups of 3, right up until I get to that marked chain 2 space. So I'm going to go ahead and move this stitch marker out of my way, and I'll be using it here as I make my new center for these V-stitch rows. What I'm going to do here is work a double crochet, followed by a chain 1, then another double crochet, and then the instructions say PM, so this is where I place my marker, right in that stitch I just made. Get that in there, there we go. Then I chain 1 again, and double crochet in that same chain 2 space. So it's sort of like, it's actually very similar to one of the centers we did in our shell stitch section. So it's just a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So sort of like the V-stitches, but with an extra chain 1 and double crochet added. From there, we can work our way back down the second side the same way we did before, with one of these V-stitches worked into each of these center double crochets from the 3 double crochet groups until we get to that very end. Okay, so when you make your V-stitches down the second side here, you get to that last 3 double crochet group, and you work it in the center stitch, you've still got that last stitch hanging out there. And if you'll recall from the beginning, we had a V-stitch in that first stitch as well. So we're going to finish off our row 39 here with a V-stitch in the very last stitch of the row. So at the end, we've got 2 of them right next to each other, just like we did there at the beginning. like so. There we go. All right, and that is it for row 39. If you did not expand section 2, which was our granny stitch section, then at the end of row 39, you should have a total of 179 double crochets. And as we continue working the next rows, we're going to just move that stitch marker right up in that stitch right along with us. So let's go ahead and begin row 40. All right, row 40 begins just like row 39 did with a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3. Those first 3 count as a double crochet. So if it's easier, go ahead and put the stitch marker in as soon as you've got that third one made there. There we go. Get the hook back in there. And we just chain 1 more for the chain space. And if I turn my work there, I can double crochet right back in that first stitch. So just the same way we began row 39 with a V-stitch in the first stitch, just like so. From there, it's even easier. We're just going to work one of these V-stitches, a double crochet, chain 1 double crochet, in each chain 1 space until we get to that marked center stitch. So that does include the one we just worked into the first stitch of. So don't miss that very first V-stitch right below right there. We're going to go ahead and work in that chain 1 space to make our next V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, right back in that chain 1 space. So we've still really got 2 right next to each other, just as we did before. But then we're going to skip all the stitches and jump over to this next chain 1 space for our next V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So then we skip over the next 2 stitches and come to the next chain 1 space right there. So just keep working each of those chain 1 spaces to make your V-stitch until we get to that marked center stitch again. All right, so as you've worked your V-stitches into the previous row's V-stitches, you'll come down here to what I guess we could call a W stitch with our marked stitch in it. We want to treat the first chain 1 space in here just as the others with another V-stitch. So we double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. But then in the marked stitch, we're going to work another W stitch. So I'll go ahead and move that stitch marker out, and we're just going to double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1 again, right there in the middle. So there's our first one, chain 1, double crochet again. Oops, there we go. And that would be our marked stitch, which I'll come back here and do here in a minute. Chain 1 and double crochet again. So now rather than a V, we've made our W. We can mark that center leg right there of our W. And then we can continue with our V stitches on down the second side here. Just make sure that you don't miss that first chain 1 space that's part of the W itself. So then after that, like I say, we'll just continue the way we made the first side until we get to the end. All right, so as we worked our way down the second side here, we're going to put our last V-stitch in that chain 1 space that's actually part of our chain 4 here. So then we need to make one more V-stitch in the top of that chain 3 that counted as our first double crochet for our first V-stitch of our previous row. So if I can get the strings around my hook here, there we go. Chain 1 and double crochet right back in that stitch. And that will finish off row 40. So it's simply a V-stitch in each V-stitch with an extra one there on the ends and that W stitch right there in the middle, and just keep moving that stitch marker up. Rows 41 through 45 are repeats of row 40 that we just made. So just like the row we made, keep making those. And again, this is another opportunity for you to make the shawl bigger if you've got a second cake and the extra yarn and you'd like it a little bit bigger. So you can just add really as many of these V-stitch rows as you like. If you do stop at row 45, you will have a total of 215 double crochets. If you go further, you'll have more. After that, it's time for round 46 to end it off, and then some edging. Row 46 is going to be a callback to our granny stitch. We are going to start with a chain 3 that will count as our first double crochet, like so. I'll turn my work here, and I'm going to make 2 double crochets right back in that first stitch again. So there's 1 and 2. Then we're simply going to work 3 double crochet groups again, but this time we're going to work them in those chain 1 spaces. So where before we were working our V-stitches in those chain 1 spaces, now we're going to go and work our 3 double crochet groups in those chain 1 spaces. However, again, don't forget, we've got this V-stitch right here on the end, so we want to make sure that we get in there first before we move on to the rest of the chain 1 spaces. So go ahead and make 3 double crochet groupings in each chain 1 space until you get back to that marked stitch in the middle. All right, so I've worked a group of 3 double crochets in each chain 1 space right up until that marked stitch in the middle of our W stitch. I'm going to go ahead and pull that stitch marker out of the way, and in that stitch I'm simply going to work a treble crochet. So I'll yarn over twice, go right in that stitch, and work a treble crochet. I don't even need to worry about marking it, but I could if I wanted to. There we go. And then I'm simply going to continue down the second side the way I was before. Find that first chain 1 space still in the W there, work 3 double crochets there, and then 3 double crochets in each chain 1 space until we get to the very end. And then of course we'll have a 3 double crochet grouping in there, and then 3 more double crochets right in that marked stitch. And that will finish up row 46, and all that's left is the edging. Okay, so after we have finished row 26, here we have the finished shawl, but after we finish row 26, we're going to have all these groups of 3 double crochets. And then it's just time for the edging, like I say. After you finish row 46, you do not turn to work back the other direction as we normally do. Instead, we're going to turn our shawl this way and work back across the top of the shawl for the edging. For the edging, we simply single crochet evenly across the tops of our rows. So that'll take us across the side of our V-stitch section, the side of our granny stitch section, and then all the way across the side of our shell stitch section, back across the second half, then again across the granny stitches and across the V-stitches here on the other side. When we get to the corners, we simply want to chain 2 at the corner and then single crochet in each stitch along the stitches here of the shawl, because we've got our 3 double crochet groupings. So that's really easy. Just single crochet in each one of those stitches. When you get down here to the treble crochet stitch, you just go ahead and work 3 single crochets right in that treble right there, and then single crochet in each remaining stitch right along here till we get back to that corner we began at down here. And then we can chain 2 and join to that very first single crochet we made when we began our edging. It's just a simple single crochet edging. The only thing is to remember is just go ahead and put 3 single crochets right in that treble so that you get a really nice turn there for the corner. And that's how to crochet the Ripley shawl. We've now worked through parts 1, 2, and 3 and finished off with the edging. If you have any other questions on this pattern, please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and please do subscribe to the Moogly YouTube channel and hit that bell button so you're notified every time we add a new video. For this pattern, please go to the link in the description. Again, there you'll find right and left-handed video tutorials, links to parts 1 and 2, the entire written pattern now that we're all done, and all the supplies you need. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day, everybody.